The Shah's policies, like the White Revolution, the Shah was not hostile against Muslims just like Armin. He was very much hostile against, well, his efforts was to de-link Islam from being involved in government, right? So I got a historical underpinning. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Armin. Within Islam doctrinally, the application of reason, I'm probably mispronouncing this, ittihad, is considered a primary heretical act other than a very brief time in the ninth century under the Mutazilites, which had a lot of Persian and Greek influences to it. That was about 80 years, and then the gates of ittihad were slammed shut by the Asherites and before the Mutazilites. Shah very much, at least in my observation, tried to reopen the gates of ittihad, and that's within the broader ulma. That's one of the points I try to make up. Why not make up? I try to reiterate to members of the ulma that are not in supportive of the mullah regime, to outline that the mullah regime is not an accurate reflection of the ulma in its entirety.
So the whole Ijtihad thing, by the way, is just more of a Sunni domain. In Shia Islam, they have opened those gates wide for a long time, and they work on a different system than the Sunnis regarding. I mean, we have a lot of mujtahids in Shia Islam, like everybody, and also to become a supreme leader, one of the requirements is to be a mujtahid, somebody who could do ijtihad. So we have in Shia Islam, we have a lot of, and also Khamenei is actually becoming a supreme leader. One of the controversies that he was not a mujtahid before he became a supreme leader. But among Shia Muslims, that is we basically are playing by completely different standards than in Sunni Islam. But Muhammad Reza Shah wasn't really trying to uh, get involved in ijtihad and stuff like that. He the only commentary he made about that was regarding at some point is that, oh, their Islam is not the real Islam. But the part that I actually admire Muhammad Reza Shah's way, because here's the thing: Muhammad Reza Shah had his hands tied when it came to Islam, right? So we had two threats against Iran at that point. One was communism, and the other one was Islamism. Fighting aggressively against communism was easier than the mullahs, because unlike now, Islam was did have a the Iranian people had respect for Islam at that time, and they had respect for the mullahs before the 1979 Islamic Revolution, right? So it made sense for Muhammad Reza Shah to go aggressively against the commies and arrest them and treat them like the terrorists that they are. But for mullahs, that was very challenging. There are many people who criticize Muhammad Reza Shah for not going as aggressively against the Islamists as he did with the commies. But I don't accept that criticism, because I think if he had done that, the revolution would have happened earlier. A lot of people have to realize that the main spark of the revolution happened when there was a newspaper that suggested that Khomeini is an Indian, and that started the first spark of the revolution. Like, people were so sensitive regarding any negative commentary against some of the greatest, that any position against them would have sparked an uprising or something like that. So Muhammad Reza Shah had to be more careful regarding the positioning that he's taking against the Islamic authorities in a way that he didn't have to with the communists. So, what I don't accept the criticism that people have had against him regarding why he wasn't tougher
Me,
at them.
me
He
neither,
wasn't able
Armin.
to
I
be.
was
Like,
just
they had such a. What I admire about Muhammad Reza Shah was that he was trying to create a competitive alternative to Islamic values by reintroducing Iranians to their ancient culture and to their heritage. With the ceremony of the 2500-year celebrations that they had when it comes to reintroducing Iranian people to the Achaemenid dynasty and the Sassanid dynasty and their poetry and all the museums that they were creating. And to him, this was a slow investment. Like, you cannot just switch Iranian mindset from being, respecting Islam, to all of a sudden give up Islam for back to their Persian, ancient Iranian heritage and identity, right? But even though he wasn't able to finish that project, the seeds that he planted grew after the Islamic Republic came, after the Pahlavi dynasty fell and the Islamic Revolution was successful. He had a longer term plan, and I don't know if he understood how successful he was in the long term. Because the reason why you're seeing Iranian people out in the streets and celebrating their ancient culture and becoming anti-Islam and anti-Islamic identity in favor of their own ancient Iranian identity is because of all the investments that Mohammad Reza Shah had made. However, that was such a long-term investment that he wasn't around to see the results of it, but now we're seeing the results. So Jeffrey, you wanted to respond to that quickly? And before
Yeah, I was just the reason I offered that is because one of the lines of effort and or thematic elements that is underwriting the Red Green Alliance is disinformation against His Highness Prince.
let me tell you,
Okay,
Jeffrey,
I don't want.
some people have been trying to divide us over like the prince saying people versus the king saying people. Like they try to divide us in so many different ways, and this was one attempt to be like, oh, if you say prince, you don't really believe in Princess of King Reza Pahlavi, or if you say king, you don't believe in his own command because he said, I'm not king until the Iranian people decide. So they try to divide us over that, but we're not falling for that. The people who say prince support the people who say king. The people who say
So,
king, they
so either
support the
one will
people who
work.
say prince.
So one of the
Yeah,
lines of
yeah,
effort regarding the disinformation being pushed by the Red Green Alliance is, well, the Shah was allegedly so brutal against Islam, which isn't true, as we both kind of outlined. The Shah approach very much was trying to move Iran into a position of tolerant modernity. He wasn't trying to like exterminate Islam in Iran the way the leftists or Islamic fundamentalists are now trying to redefine his white revolution, right?
right.
As a way
Yeah,
to delegitimize or morally flatten the Shah
right,
versus the Mullah regime. And I just,
right.
and neither does His Highness Prince
Yeah.
Reza Pahlavi, which
But
this
that's
is,
what I'm trying to do.
yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate, yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. I'm just saying that it speaks volumes to
Yes,
the
yes.
decency
Because
of Iranian
yeah,
people that they are still able to withhold that level of humanity even after
yeah.
suffering such brutality.
So let me. I know the list. By the way, I saw Nestle also raise his hand. So guys, the list is long. So I just going to really quick response to Jeffrey here because I think this is very important, and then we're going to go to the list. And guys, please be quick because I want everybody else who raised their hand to be able to speak as well. I saw Ariana also raise her hand again. The government should not have an anti-Islamic stance. That's what secularism means. But the citizens can, and I advocate for them to do so. The Iran that we are advocating for is an Iran that where the government stays out of religion, no religion in politics, not in favor of any religion, but also not against any religion. That's what secularism is supposed to be. So, from the position of Muhammad Reza Shah or Reza Pahlavi, King Reza Pahlavi, when he becomes king, they should not take any positions against Islam. However, as an anti Islamic activist, I think in a secular country, the Muslims should have the freedom outside of politics to advocate for Islam. I want them to have that freedom. And I, as an anti Islamic advocate, should also have the same ability to advocate against Islam with the intention of destroying Islam completely, as long as we're just doing it without any violence or any harassments, as long as we're just doing it with speech. They could basically go all out and trying to make Islam everything Islamic with advocacy, with speech. And I should also be able to try my best to completely eradicate with Islam as long as I'm only using my speech. And we're gonna have a free, fair competition and just see who wins. Okay, this is what we're advocating for. When I say I want to destroy Islam, I'm not talking about any form of violence or oppression against Muslims. I'm only talking about advocacy, and they could also have the fair is battleground. Basically, fair game. The government should just provide safety and security for both of us to have this competition. All right. So,
Next, I
who's
have
next?
Daniel Dom.
Good evening. Do you hear me?
Yes. Daniel, there's so many risen hands, so if you could guys keep it short so we can get to more. Okay,
as short as it's possible.
thank you.
My question is, I'm sure once the Mullah regime is fallen, Iran should absolutely get the nuclear program like Israel has or hasn't.
So if you check the IPP, the Iran Prosperity Project, Prince of Pahlavi and his team standing is that we're going to basically give up enrichment of uranium, or I think basically we're going to have international observers coming in and making sure there's no, enrichment of uranium or a nuclear program. That is for the transitional government. What we're going to do after that, again, I think it's going to be decided based on a democratic the government that the Iranian people have picked are going to come up with our policy. First, we're going to have a referendum where we're going to decide whether Iran is going to be a republic or a constitutional monarchy. Then we're going to choose the people who are going to be writing the constitution, and then we're going to have an election where we pick the parliament. And I think based on the constitution and the laws written in our parliament, we're going to decide whether we're going to have enrichment of uranium at all. I suspect that we are going to probably get rid of it completely because a lot of people are going to remember it being associated with the Islamic Republic and their agenda. And they're also going to remember that all of this insistence of enrichment of uranium is what brought us all of these sanctions and the isolation, and all of this is a threat to the world. Again, we will also probably understand that even though now we have a good government that is not going to be threatening the rest of the world, a lot of the rest of the world might not be hesitant to have a good relationship with us, not knowing if this government is stable. What if the government collapse and then we become Islamic again? And now they have all of this enrichment of uranium. So it basically makes sense for our international relationship perspective to just stay away from it. And Iran is actually such a good country for solar energy. Like we have like a lot of deserts that are basically with the best for
Unpopulated.
solar panels. Yeah, so I think when it comes to alternative energy to oil and gas, just like Muhammad Reza Shah basically
Yeah, I remember
envisioned,
you told it
I think
yesterday.
going and investing in solar energy, I think would make the best sense for Iran instead of maybe nuclear.
And also, real quick on the attack that like supposed to be and then didn't. It just made the IRGC exposed where are their air defenses, where they are going to go when they like gonna hide. So it was
Yes.
an active passive collecting of intelligence. So
Yes, you're right. You're right. Because the Islamic Republic expected the attack to happen earlier, they moved so many things around, and that may manage to get the Israelis and the Americans collect a lot of information regarding where everything is. Information that, and none of this could be changed that easily. So whenever the war happens, the Islamic Republic doesn't have enough time to change its strategies in enough time. So now they're very much exposed for the war that is coming about. That's going to happen. So yeah, it left them very exposed and vulnerable because now Israelis and Americans have a lot more information.
and the last thing, just like
Yeah.
my I just see a lot of stuff that going on on the internet on the Iranian protests are out of Iran.
Thank you, Daniel. I really appreciate you saying it. I appreciate that. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. All right, guys, let's go through the list. By the way, can somebody write the entire list? Nestle, you're already on the list. I saw that your name is on the list. So
I
we
have
saw
it.
your
I'm
reason.
pasting it periodically. Ashkan is next.
Okay.
Maybe let's go to the next guy and we can come back. Eitan is next.
And guys, try to keep it short as possible. Thank you. Yeah. So guys, in about 40 minutes, we're gonna stop the recording. So people who don't want to be recorded and be on YouTube could speak then. He wants to speak then. Okay, Sabina is next, right?
Yeah, Sabina is next.
So I have been, trying to counter the people on social media that are against Pahlavi. And, one of the things that I end up getting into is, which I'm mostly able to do, is defend, Mohammed Reza Pahlavi Shah. But one of the things I'm having problems with, I've been using the narrative that you've given us, but one of the things I'm having problems with is, so much of the sources that are out there are like in favor of Mossadegh and, against the Shah. And I'm wondering if you could maybe make a post where you give us, sources to look to that provide the correct narrative.
Okay, so let me just quickly go over this with regard to Mossadegh and the coup d'état, right?
Right.
The definition of coup d'état requires for it to once be illegal. Do you agree? A coup d'état needs to be illegal, right? And a coup d'état is something that happens from the bottom up. Do you agree? Like if somebody, when it comes to the command structure, removes somebody under them, that's not a coup d'état. If somebody from in the command structure from under somebody removes somebody who's supposed to be above them, that's a coup d'état. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so the only source of information that you need is the Constitution of Iran when Mohammad Reza Shah was in power. Okay, because if you refer to the Constitution, you could ask ChatGPT to look at the Constitution and find the places for you, right? The Shah at the time was completely within its legal right to remove the prime minister from power, right? So how could the Shah doing a coup d'etat against Mossadegh by using his constitutional ability to remove the prime minister from power? How is that a coup? That is basically in line with his legal rights according to the constitution at the time. How is that a coup?
Right. Well,
and also,
yeah.
Hold on. Let me make my point. Okay. So also, based on the constitution, the prime minister was serving under the Shah. The Shah was a superior position according to the constitution at that time in Iran. The Shah was above the prime minister, and he commanded over him. Chose basically put the Shah is the person that would confirm the prime minister and also could remove him anytime he wants. So based on both of the definition of a coup d'état, Mossadegh was doing a coup d'état against the Shah, not Shah against Mossadegh. Mossadegh, what he was doing against the Shah was not allowed according to the constitution, and he was also not and also he was under the Shah. And also two other points: people say Mossadegh was democratically elected, people's choice. That is bullshit. The prime minister was not directly chosen by the people, right? And it was the Shah originally that put him in that position anyways. One. Two, and he decided to remove him, and then he resisted because he wanted to get all the power. Two, they say that there was a referendum that Mossadegh had that allowed him to annul the parliament, because Mossadegh didn't have the legal ability to annul the parliament anyways, according to the constitution. So that was not within his legal right. But they say he held a referendum. Well, first of all, it was not within his legal right to hold a referendum. One, two, they took the referendum in a way that made it impossible for anybody to vote against what Mossadegh wanted, because they put the yes votes in a different place than the no votes of the city, so that the people who were voting against Mossadegh could be identified. And remember, Mossadegh was very intimidating. Like, he was supporting terrorist activities. He would shut down media that was against them. He would suppress people who would speak against them. So in that environment, voting against what Mossadegh wanted, given that, like, it doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't you just put the yes and no in the same ballot box? Why would you separate the ballot box only for people to be able to be identified if they're voting different? He put it in different parts of the city. So that's why that referendum doesn't even make any sense. And also, the people who brought the Shah back were not the Americans, because we have on record that the Americans were surprised that Iranians came into the streets in defense of the Shah to bring the Shah back. If you actually look at the records, the Americans didn't have much of a presence inside Iran at that point, so they wouldn't be able to carry on such an operation. And they were completely ready to accept Mossadegh. Their estimation, their analysis was that Mossadegh is winning and Shah has lost. But when the people came into the streets in defense of the Shah, you could actually see communications from CIA agents in Iran to Washington, D.C. saying, like, oh my God, everything is changing. And they were completely shocked. So the idea that the Americans brought back the Shah is bullshit. It was the royalists and the supporters of Shah that turned the tide against Mossadegh and in favor of the Shah.
Right.
And all of this is documented.
Where do I find that documentation?
I mean, if you just ask Gemini for the sources and then verify that the sources are correct, just ask, basically say that this is what I'm looking for. All of this is documented. Like if you ask Gemini, it will point you to the right direction.
Okay, and I guess
Gemini,
I was also wondering if Adriana might like make a post like where she talks about the Arianism that she talked
yes.
about before, just so
So
it was there.
Ariana, in the community post, can you make some? Can you post your views in the community tab of our group so that people could actually use that as a reference?
Definitely, and that was a brilliant explanation I gave about Mossadegh. Very, very brilliant.
Right. I would like to call upon Lucy. There's no Lucy in the chat, so I'm gonna skip her and I'm gonna go to me. I came back from the rally in Toronto and I'd like to report. I personally saw a couple of thousand people, but there were probably more. They weren't done when I left. I just left because I was getting too cold. I was a bit late to show up, and the first thing I saw was when I was a block away from the gathering area, there was some guy giving instructions loudly in Persian. So I got someone to translate, and he wanted us to clear the road for people to march through. I actually didn't see anyone there that didn't speak Persian. I'm guessing there were a couple of other non-Iranians sprinkled in. The atmosphere felt really respectful towards each other, and people were very happy when they found out that I'm Israeli, but it still felt a little unwelcoming towards non-Iranians just because of the language barrier. I saw Iranian flags, Canadian flags, Israeli flags, American flags. The rally is in Toronto, Canada, by the way. That's our Canadian flags. I saw a Trump flag, and I also saw some light blue flags that I understand are the flag of the Shah. There were a couple of English chants, SOS for Iran, Freedom for Iran, and Danut Khamenei. And while I don't know the Persian phrase, I could answer to Mar Barse Parsed with Mullah's leftists MK, which is nice because it's the same number of syllables. And then we walked through the streets for about 2 kilometers, and then there was to be a speech at the last place that we arrived at. But at that point, I was getting too cold and I had to leave.
Okay, Danny, I'm so grateful for your participation. I'm so grateful that you were there. Thank you so much.
But I also saw that there were a lot of people that didn't speak good English at all. Like one time when I asked to translate a phrase, the woman couldn't, not because she didn't speak Iranian, but because she didn't speak English, or didn't speak it well enough. So maybe it's best this way. I saw Ian raise his hand while I was talking. Was there anyone else?
No, it was just Ian. You could add him to the list. By the way, can we? Oh, Ariana was. I think she's already on the list as well, right? Ariana is also on the list. Can we go through the people who haven't spoken first? Because Nestle, I know, I've seen Nestle. He's on the list. Like, when are we going to get to Nestle? Because he's been waiting. For
Nestle's actually next.
Okay, Nestle next. All right, go Nestle. You're muted. Unmute yourself. Click on the mic.
You're still muted. Mic is to the left. Oh, you got it.
Yes, now we hear you. Go ahead.
I'm speaking on my iPad, and it is going through Safari. Maybe I should use an app. Could be better, the school app. But let me say first of all, Armin, I have been following you and Goldie in the Iran Revolution, and I've always enjoyed listening to you.
Oh, what happened?
I think it's his connection. He got stuck before.
Oh, that was so sweet, though. Okay, so Nestle, we can't hear you if you're speaking. If you can hear us, sorry about that. He was waiting for such a long time. Maybe don't open your camera. All right, so let's move on. Hopefully, Nestle will get his connection situation fixed.
Okay. The list is surprisingly manageable at this point. I don't know who didn't speak yet today, but next I have...
Okay, let's move on.
Okay. The next one is Ariana.
Ariana.
Hi, me again. And this is the last time. I know it's really, really busy, but you said the Shah Well, first of all, I want you to know that I adore all the Pahlavis. What they did for Iran is like it's on, it's a record that everyone can read about, especially for women, right? So just know that. But I don't praise anyone like they're kings, they're not gods or prophets or whatnot. You said the Shah Muhammad as a Shah, he wanted to revive our culture, and that's why he gave that. So that's why he gave that festival, right? But it was
the 2,500 celebrations drive Iranian culture.
Yeah. Yes, you say it's because he tried to revive Iranian culture and he was not really a Muslim. But that
I didn't say that.
Oh,
I didn't say he wasn't really. I didn't say he wasn't really a Muslim.
Okay, then I misunderstood. Okay, so but he gave that celebration because the Iranians came up with that, and they really pushed for that festival, and they were also the one who pushed for not giving away Bahrain. So his mistakes, for me, one of his mistakes was he didn't, and it's not like, obviously it's easy for me to say it's a mistake because I live here now. I have ChatGPT now. It's easy to look back and say it's a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't even call it a mistake, but I don't want a new Iran with a loophole for Islam. Because Islam is not like any other religion. Islam is a superstitionist religion. It wants to take over. Its nature is like Nazism. Just like Germany banned Nazism, I like to see an Iran that bans Islam. But I'll leave it at this.
Okay, but what was it, before I respond to you, what was it? I didn't hear a mistake. What was his mistake?
His mistake was that he thought that he could basically create a new Islam. He thought that he had ideas in the end, that in his diary that he was Mahdi, and he had this sympathy for Islam instead of knowing his own religion or background or philosophy. He was a brilliant man, but his mistake was basically his sympathy for Islam and not killing Khomeini. That one of the biggest mistakes that he made is not killing Khomeini, even though Khomeini had committed treason. He sent Khomeini away. He thought if he killed Khomeini, he would be a martyr and so on and so forth. But giving too much voice on Islamists and Muslims was, in my opinion, one of his biggest mistakes.
Okay, so I might say some things in his defense that you're probably going to disagree with, but it's okay. Let's just have some friendly disagreements here, okay? By the way, regarding Bahrain, we have already lost Bahrain during the Qajar dynasty. Okay, so that regarding Bahrain. But regarding Muhammad Reza Shah, I don't really care about his personal beliefs. I care about what he did as a king. Right? I look at like whatever his personal beliefs were, that's a separate topic. His performance as a king and the impact he had on Iran, that's his resume. With regards to dealing with Muslims and banning Islam, I think a lot of younger Iranians, don't understand the environment that we were in back during Muhammad Reza Shah's time. Like that was basically suicide. I think what you guys are advocating for Muhammad Reza Shah to do was basically making the 1979 Islamic Revolution to happen in 1969 or earlier. And basically, we would have been losing our Shah earlier, and a lot of the investments that he had made, we wouldn't have that if he had done so. I don't know if people understand the position that Islam had and the respect that people had for the mullahs back then in Iran. That would have been an impossible thing for Muhammad Reza Shah to do. Regarding killing Khomeini, I do agree that there are many opportunities for Muhammad Reza Shah to have stopped the Islamic Revolution from happening. Like his own generals told him that, we could just basically kill the protesters and it will stop it. And they said that we could kill Khomeini and they would have stopped it. Yeah, if we had killed Khomeini, it would have stopped it. If he had killed a lot of the protesters, it would have stopped it. And we would right now be continuing to be living under Pahlavi dynasty if he had done that. And I used to think that was one of his main mistakes. But I think that what people don't understand is that what Muhammad Reza Shah accurately was trying to do is to build a society from the bottom up rather than enforcing the correct way from the top down. So what we had with Muhammad Reza Shah, we had a Shah that was ahead of his time. his vision and his understanding and his policies and his modernization were at a level where the population was still not at his level. And what we were expecting when we say he should have killed Khomeini, he should have did this to the communists, he should have just suppressed the revolution, what we wanted him to do was basically force the modernization, the maturity on the Iranian people from a top-down approach. But I think what Mohammad Reza Shah didn't want to do, he didn't want to force his way upon the people. He didn't want to kill Khomeini. He didn't want to kill the protesters. He didn't want, if the Iranian people were not ready for his more mature, modern way of running a country, then that was not a society that was ready for what he had to offer. What he did, instead, he planted the seeds of progress in Iran. He planted the seed of progress in Iran, and because the Iranian people were not ready for him, he left instead of forcing his way, right? And by leaving, the Iranian people realized in the past 47 years what he was doing for Iran and how his way was the correct way. Like, if you study history, you realize that you get prosperity and progress when a society grows and becomes mature from the bottom up organically among the citizens. And Princess of Pahlavi, instead of making us follow the correct model, he gave us the tools. He planted the seeds inside the soil of Iran so that once he has left, once we see what we have done to Iran, at least we have the tools to rebuild it once we realize that what we was doing. Right now, more Iranians are saying Javid Shah in the streets of Iran than they were saying Javid Shah when Mohammad Reza Shah was alive. And that would have never happened if Mohammad Reza Shah killed Khomeini. That would have never happened if Mohammad Reza Shah ordered his generals to shoot at the protesters and continue to rule by creating a bloodbath. Iranians would have still respected Islam today if Mohammad Reza Shah did that. They wouldn't have become this pro-Pahlavi. They wouldn't become this modern. They wouldn't have become this much anti-Islamic. This is why I agree with Mohammad Reza Shah. He just gave us a tool. He left because we were ungrateful, and now we want Pahlavi more than anything else. If he stayed with force, if he stayed with an iron fist, we would have never understood this, and we would have stayed backwards as a society. The Iranian people are now some of the best people in the world when it comes to their proper values, and that happened because Mohammad Reza Shah didn't force his way upon us.
But his father did force his way upon us, and we loved it.
Yeah, because during Reza Shah's time, Iran was falling apart. Iran was on an edge of collapse. Like at the end of the Qajar dynasty, Iran as a country was basically falling apart. So we got the best king. We needed an iron fist when Reza Shah was king, and we got an iron fist. And then when we needed culture and education and modernization, with Mohammad Reza Shah, we got that. We got the best king when we needed the Reza Shah, and we also got the best king when we needed Mohammad Reza Shah. We needed an iron fist when the whole country was falling apart with Reza Shah.
All right.
Jeffrey, did you want to add something to that?
Oh.
Jeffrey, quickly, yeah.
Quickly. So to bounce off some of what Armin said, it's because of outside influences, leftist Soviets' delegitimization of the Shah that centered around identity politics. It confused tolerance towards Muslims with tolerance towards Islamic fundamentalism. And that confusion underwrote like some within Carter's administration to push to constrain Savak's operations, which, because of those constraints, made Iran under the Shah more vulnerable, and they got neither. It was kind of like you needed an iron fist and a velvet glove, as Nixon would say, right? And the issue, and His Highness Mohammed Pahlavi, the Shah, very much tried to do that and was very adept at doing that. Tragically, because of those outside influences, it undermined his ability to realize the return upon a lot of the things that he very much, in very forward thinking, implemented. He took a top-down approach to enable bottom-up development, right? You see that all throughout the White Revolution. So, yeah, I mean, like, I'm just trying to elaborate, at least from my own perspective, some of the operational elements that kind of underwrite.
Okay.
I wish the Shah never fell.
No.
The iron fist that Reza Shah had, I'm just going to say that it was also about modernization. It wasn't about to suppress us. It was about, he didn't put up his ideas for referendum because we weren't there, because Islam was so invasive that if he wanted to say girls should go to school, girls should not wear a hijab, then the parents would not allow it. So that fist was for us.
Yep, I agree. Reza Shah was the right king at the right time. Completely agree with his
100%.
policies.
100%.
100%. All right.
So Kian's question is, Armin, do you think that the revolution will now become an armed war of independence? Do you think it's possible that the Immortal Guard and the resistance generally will use guerrilla tactics? Essentially, he's asking if it could develop into a civil war sort of situation.
So here's the thing. I don't really know how they are going to get armed. Okay. Like, where is that going to come from? Because I don't see how it's going to come from outside. I see how it might come from inside, because maybe the Iranian people at some point will overwhelm the IRGC bases, the warehouses, or the Niriya Intizami, or with regard. So that is the most likelihood option for them to become armed, right? I do, with regards to, because if you want to bring it from outside, it's going to be easily detectable, and you may actually get into the hands of IRGC itself. So it's really hard to arm the Iranian people from outside. But with regards to whether or not it's a good idea or a bad idea, there's an analysis that I haven't yet listened to that I'm more leaning in towards a good idea, but there's somebody that I really trust that had a analysis out that says it's a bad idea. So I'm not completely married to one way or another. Like, I'm open to hearing both sides of this. However, I don't think it makes even much sense for us to decide whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, because if it happens, it's inevitable, right? I think the Iranian people, a lot of the ones who don't want to get armed are not going to get armed, and the ones who want to get armed, as soon as they get their hands on some weapons, they're going to get armed and they're going to start fighting in with their weapons, right? So I think a moral judgment on this, like a lot of people expecting, makes no sense. If something is going to happen, then we should just be talking about how to deal with it happening rather than whether or not it's a good idea. I think it's the results of this. I do believe in the wisdom of the crowd, and also I'm a little bit deterministic when it comes to how things happen in politics and in society. So I do believe that if the Iranian people do arm themselves, then I support that, and if they don't arm themselves, I support that as well. So I think that all changes if Prince Pahlavi orders an order one way or another. That is the highest priority. If Prince Pahlavi one day comes out and says, Iranian people, arm yourself, then that's the answer. If Prince Pahlavi comes out one day and says, Iranian people, arming yourself is not a good idea, that is the final answer. But without that order, I will support whatever the wisdom of the crowd in the streets of Iran is deciding. It is likely that at some point they will be armed, because I can see in the final moments when the Islamic Republic is collapsing, I can imagine a lot of Iranians figuring out, I mean, they already probably know where the weapons are being kept. And if the Islamic Republic is basically, their forces are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, I'm pretty sure at that point, many Iranians will be able to get their hands on some of these warehouses and arm themselves. This might be something that will happen regardless of what our opinions is about it. Jeffrey, quickly, really short, can you say, do you agree with that? And Nestle, you're back on the list, but go on, Jeffrey.
So, like Armin, to recap over what Armin said, the idea of providing weaponry like small arms and equipment to brave Iranian protesters has pros and cons. He outlined some of the operational cons, which is how do you get it into Iran? You could either, like, let's say you airdrop it, you have to get around IRGC air defense, and how do you make sure that the airdrop is picked up by the good guys and not the bad guys? If you try to do like a land route, there's issues regarding that. It'd probably be picked up by the IRGC or the besiege brigades. They might catch you as you're talking about like this long logistics chain into Iran. So it's not impossible. Here's what I would suggest, though, if you really want to pursue the kinetic approach legally, where it would have impact, I would suggest it would be very beneficial to look at Ukraine's model, right? Particularly how Ukraine targets specific key strategic assets in Russia using things that are very low cost. Doing that would definitely have a significant impact on things that are run.
Okay.
So I'd like to go back to Nestle while his internet.
Nestle?
I hope that I no longer have any technical difficulties. I appreciate your patience. Let me jump right straight into the discussion about arming and not arming. I think this is, like Armin said, it's going to happen no matter what we think. It's going to happen. But I don't think that it's going to come from outside. I think the Iranian people basically need help so that the regime can collapse by striking strategy. The Iranian people has already paid such a heavy price. They will get their hands on those weapons and they will defend themselves accordingly. It's really no point of dropping arms to them or anything like that. They don't even need, like Prince Riza Pahlavi said, we don't need boots on the ground. All we need is a way for the regime not to stand anymore and killing innocent people. The rest, the Iranian people can handle it. They don't want soldiers on the ground. They just want those strategic sites to be dismantled, and the regime cannot stand as it is. That's all I have to say.